Welcome to One Bad Podcast. Here's your hosts, KD and Shaner.
All right, KD, well, we're coming full circle here. So we started the whole podcast off talking about the Sebastian Bach tour, which was the big U.S. tour that we've now talked about a few episodes here, how, the things we really wanted coming out of Made in the Name were like, we wanted that #1 hit. That's what we were gunning for. And the other thing we wanted was a U.S. tour because it was so difficult for us to break down there. And then, we get this Sebastian Bach tour. So yes, this is the full circle moment. So there's everything that we talked about up to this in so many ways culminated in that #1 and, as big as things got, arena tours and stuff that followed. But this was a really major tour in a few different ways because it was massive. I mean, we'll get into the logistics of the thing alone, but so do you remember how we got this tour? I feel like I remember it was a last minute thing, or do you remember how that went down?
Yeah, so I remember I got a call from, because I think that was we were with Feldman at that point, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
so,
we were with our new agent.
Yeah, so
the agent who gave a shit about booking us shows.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. I remember I just got the call, being like, "Do you guys want to tour the U.S.?" And yeah, to your point, I mean, it's like we always thought. I mean, so many Canadian bands never break in the U.S. I mean, we know it so well. And the Tragic Hip. I just watched that documentary again. It's like you wonder how so many bands don't actually break in the U.S. and then some become way bigger in the U.S. than they are in Canada. And it's like, how does that work? We just knew. I think we all thought, being self-aware, that OBS had a sound that could work in the U.S. We weren't like a Canadiana sort of sounding band. We had a big sort of arena rock sound. So let's give it a go in the U.S. Right? But it was so not easy to make any headway down there. Right? Like we didn't. Our label was definitely didn't have a lot of pull in the U.S. Our agents agents in general they're used to booking you in Canada. Right? So it's like they don't like our agency doesn't even have. Like they'd have to team up with someone else in America to make it work. So long story short, it's like we finally got this opportunity and we knew we had to do it. Right. And, we got the call and it was like, let's do this. And it was like, what, 40 dates or something like that? Like it was.
Yeah. I think it was close to at least. Yeah, it was
like 2 months. We were gone 2 months, like 40 dates in 2 months. And I think like, an important thing for the listeners to realize, and I think a lot of bands would know this, but maybe not, is that like when you're touring crazy routing with lots of big drives, it's not that difficult if you're in a bus, right? Because you can, and we talked about this a little bit, but if you're going like a 8-hour drive in a bus, that's easy. You drive overnight. Your bus driver drives overnight while you sleep, and you wake up. You're in the next city, right? You get up and do your thing. Yeah. But for us, we never got to that level, or if we did, it would have just cost too much to have a bus. And as an opener, I mean, I think we got $400 or $500 a night, I think, on that.
Probably something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, which doesn't cover even hotels and food and gas, right? So we're losing money every show. So we definitely can't do a bus, right? It just wasn't feasible. So that routing, I mean, I remember we saw the routing, we're like, holy crap! Like you and I shared the excitement. We also saw these crazy drives that they booked because, again, Bach and his team, they just want to get as many shows in as possible, especially while they have a bus rented, right? So they want to cram in as many shows as possible. And for the opener who's driving in a van and trailer every night, it was just like, it was crazy. So anyways, feel free to elaborate on that. Like, I just remember thinking, this is going to break us, but we're going to do it,
I mean, that's the right way to sum it up because it was in crazy long, like you said, as far as dates, but also the routing, like we started in Denver. That was the first show. I went Denver. We worked our way down to Texas. We worked our way up to Maine and then back down through New York and then back down to Florida and ended the tour in Florida and then came back to Canada. So it was like when you I like what you said because it's so true. When you get the initial burst of excitement, like, oh man, here we go, like we finally get it, and it's like obviously a bunch of places we never played before. But then you start looking at that routing and you think, oh shit, it's gonna be full on. And yeah, man, It was full on. And I will say the one nice thing about touring the US, unlike Canada, is that the drives aren't quite as crazy in between. Like we didn't have those same kind of like, you're not playing in Calgary one night and Winnipeg the next night, which we had a million times. Like but there, you're maybe driving. I think our longest drive between shows, we might have had a couple longer ones, but, we were maxing out at like 5 hours at least between shows. So it wasn't like quite the same kind of like 15 to 20 hour drive, which we'd had. Like I said, so that was kind of nice about the US because those big cities are so much closer to each other. Um, but yeah, it was, man, it was a wild ride. That tour felt like it was, like you're right, it was 2 months, but man, it felt like it was 6 months by the time we got back with everything that was going on. And don't want to say like, I know people die for tour stories and you don't want to go too inside baseball, but like, I was happy that, Bach he was good to us, but like, he lived up to the 80s rock star kind of legend, I will say.
Well, I think we should. You're right. And again, yeah, we're not going to disclose too many sort of behind the scenes details about him because I'll leave that to him. But you got to tell the story of, we thought like for a lot of these opening acts, opening tours we did, we got to know the headliners, right? Like the Def Leppard guys were all our buddies by the end. The Shinedown guys are all our buddies by the end. Hell, I mean, we played 2 shows with Judas Priest, and Halford came back and hung out with us, right? He came to our dressing room and was like the most humble, kind guy. So generally speaking, like you open for a band, they often come and try to meet you. But you need to tell the story because we did 40 dates with Bach, and on the final night, remember in Florida. Well, you tell the story because, well, I'll set up a little bit. So Shane, obviously, to the listeners, very talented artist, and so he did this super amazing drawing. I think it was of Incredible Hulk, for Bach's son, because his son was like 4 years old or something, and he was kind of on tour for.
Yeah, he was pretty little.
Yeah, so you spent like hours making this Incredible Hulk for his son, and super thoughtful move, and you go and hand it to Bach on the final night of the tour, and what does he say to you?
Well, you're almost right. So I did it mid tour because we went on his bus once. Remember, like we went up and they had us hang out and stuff like that, and because this is very important because we were hanging out, and then we thought, well, like, oh, we'll probably do this a few times during the tour, right? Hung out back there, and there was like, shenanigans going on the bus. But we all chatted and hung out and stuff, and that's where we found out, like, he said his kid liked Incredible Hulk. So yes, I drew that because, why not? I thought it was a nice kind of thing to do. Anyways, I'd given it to somebody to give to him mid-tour. And then
Oh, mid-tour. Okay.
yeah, so I give it, so he had it, and it came from the singer of OBS is how they gave it to him. And because we'd met and chatted, like the 4 of us and him, and you were wearing some sort of hat, like some sort of memorable hat, as through the history of OBS. KD has had a lot of memorable hats.
Yeah, it was the black top hat that I wore, kind of like a John Bonham, tip of the hat, literally. I wore it for that whole tour. Yeah, it's like after a show, your hair's all messy, put on the top hat. So yeah, the black top hat.
Yeah, well, and so trying to break this story down, there was a bit of shenanigans with us and the other opener who there was a bit of a dispute because we were the first opener for half the tour, then we were the direct opener for the next half of the tour, and one of the people in that band did not like that, and it was a whole kind of thing.
Oh, so much drama.
Yeah, there was a lot of drama, and so an incident happened partway through our when we were the direct opener. That was it was my fault.
Well,
I blame Hicks for booking us into a really cold out of season Airbnb, and then we all got a cold, and I was on some like very heavy over the counter prescription drugs. Anyway, shenanigans happened on stage. We almost got booted off the tour.
Yeah.
So, but it was actually just a play to get us to go back to the first opener. So that was like the thing. So anyway, we went back to that. And so Bach knew that the singer of OBS was the guy that had the shenanigans at this show, and he knew the singer drew this picture. Um, anyway, last show of the tour. Now we've come again full circle on this. I was coming after our set. I was coming backstage, and I happened to run into Bach because he, as you know, he was never there like until like what felt like minutes before he went on stage, and I just happened to see him, and I was like, ah, fuck it, it's the last day of the tour. I know he doesn't like to get bugged really, but I was like, hey, you know, like, cause we all went in and said hey to the band and like thanks for having us on the tour, and as you do for bands out there, it's always nice to be grateful as an opener. So I stopped him and I was like, hey, I was like, thank you so much, man, for having us out. And, you know, sorry for any of the shit that kind of went on. He's like, oh, no. He's like, no, man, it's all good, man. Like, yeah. And I'm like, and I'm glad that or I hope that your son liked the Incredible Hulk that I drew for him. And he's like, yeah, your singer drew that for me, man. And I was like, well, that's me. I said, I'm the singer. He's like, no, you're singer, the guy in the hat.
And he pointed over at me. Yeah, like
Points over at Katie, and I was like, no, that's Kurt, that's the drummer. I said, I'm the singer. He's like, he just looked at his whole band and was like, what the fuck, man? In like a very 80s like tone, and then he just looked bewildered. I don't think he remembered who we were or, you know, knew anything that was going on.
well, and I
And
remember
then he said, you're welcome, and walked off.
I mean, I just get such a kick out of that. You trying to convince him that you're the singer of our band, you know? And it's like,
It's like, no, not you, the guy, not you, the guy in the hat, the singer. Like, yeah, it was, it really summed up what that tour kind of was, which was like, kind of what it should be, I suppose, when you're opening for someone like Bach. Like there was a bit of that 80s kind of craziness going on with a lot of it, which like, I don't know, felt right to me. I don't know how you felt about it.
yeah, I mean, like that's being generous to him, which I like that you're being generous. And you know, it's so like I love, you know, I love Bach, but I think I had higher expectations, right? I thought like, so after 40 shows, he never even saw us play once, right? Like, because if he did,
Yeah.
he would know that I'm the fucking drummer and you're the fucking singer, you know? So he didn't like 40 shows. He couldn't even pop his head in for like literally a song, right?
Yeah.
Maybe I just build things up in my mind, but I thought he'd be like, because I think, you know, obviously with your vocal style, like, and our band sound, like I thought he would dig OBS, right? But he
Yeah.
didn't give us a chance. He was, you know, so whatever. I mean, but yeah, it's always like, and I'm gonna just quickly tell why we lost the main opening slot was because some guy was just in front of our front row because he got front row to save that spot for Bach, right? So he's standing in the front row with his arms crossed and then staring at his phone, and he's right in front of you. And sure, you can say
Yeah.
the meds. I think you were on some meds, but I also loved it, and I support you to this day that you called him out on it. Said, if you're gonna be in the front row, get off your fucking phone, you know. And I was like, yeah. I was gonna throw a stick at him, but then I could get charged, you know. But you know, you
Yeah.
called him out, and then this guy just happened to be a Bach super fan who had paid for and Bach would charge you $100 to come onto his bus to meet him. Which, again, I'm disclosing
yeah.
all the details here, listeners.
Hey.
Rockstar 101, $100 US if you want to come onto the bus. And so this guy happened to have paid that, and only like 5-10 people pay that a night, but so he's hardcore. So he goes onto the bus and says, hey, the guy in the opening band gave me shit for being on my phone. And then Bach's like, what? And then someone told Bach that your voice is kind of similar to his or something like that. And so Bach's like, is he trying to make fun of me or something? And we're like,
Oh, that dude, you remember more of this than I do. I obviously like those meds were fairly powerful.
yeah, exactly. But it's just like the idea that somehow we're trying to like imitate him song wise or something. It's just ludicrous, right? But and again, I think, you know, to be fair, I think Bach's, you know, was a little, his mind was a bit altered itself, you know, the whole tour.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, anyway, so we were so bummed because we were rolling into New York City in a couple days, or I think it was that day we were rolling in, and I think we got the
Yeah.
call saying you guys are back to the third band, as in it goes Bach and then the opener and then the third band, which is us. And they, you know, we had our girls coming into New York City to see us, and
Yeah.
the difference between the third band or being direct support is huge, right? Because you don't get, you get the opener already gets a little piece of the stage. The opener of the opener gets even a smaller piece of the stage, and it was a big deal. But anyways, long story short, that's kind of the drama to all you listeners out there. It's like when you're on tour as an opener, I mean, yes, be respectful, be thankful, all that stuff, which we were. We were never late. We were always ripping all night to get there on time to sound check, and being so nice to everyone. Everyone in box band, and the rest of the guys were all great. But stuff like that can happen, right? Where it's like, it was just crappy, right? Like a little bit of drama that really ended up sort of screwing us over for the second half of the tour,
Well, totally, man. And you know what? We're on time, so let's just break this into 2 episodes. This is the the Bach drama. But I mean, again, you're right. Shit happens, but we'll finish up on this, and we'll kind of get into what happens next. So let's do it again in a minute, buddy.
Okay, sounds good, buddy.
Thanks for listening to One Bad Podcast.